Where is Aaron right now?
Hola, mis amigos. Me llamo Aaroncito. Nah, it's just me, Aaron. Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. This is an update into the federal fraud investigations into Grant Cardone and Cardone Capital. 2 weeks ago, I published a video called Scientologist Grant Cardone stole over $100 million from Cardone Capital investors. In that video, I showed for the first time how Grant Cardone has stolen hundreds of millions of dollars of profit from Cardone Capital investors by front-running his investors on the properties that he is purportedly finding for them. I also revealed in that video that Grant Cardone and Cardone Capital are under federal investigation and have been for quite some time. There's 4 responses in particular that I want to address in this video. One response is, where is any of your evidence for this? Another response is, where do you get your information from? A third response is, all of this is legal because it's disclosed in the documents that investors sign. And the fourth response is, there was already a lawsuit making these allegations and the lawsuit was thrown out. For the first one, where's your evidence? So we're talking about evidence that Grant Cardone is front-running his investors, and we're talking about evidence of the federal investigation. So first, let's take the evidence of Grant front-running his investors. Now in the video that I did, this is the spreadsheet that I used in the video. I had created a sanitized version of the information that had been shared with me, partially so that Grant couldn't be 100% certain where I got the information from. You might think that the information on this spreadsheet is available to anyone in records that are publicly available, and that is simply not true. The true price that Grant Cardone himself paid for the properties is not disclosed, it's never disclosed, and in many cases it is impossible to find that price through publicly available documents. So how did I get the information? Let me show you. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a Cardone Capital spreadsheet, not just a spreadsheet created by a Cardone Capital employee. This spreadsheet was created by Grant Cardone himself. This is an internal record, an internal document. This was a shared file. Only a handful of people had access to this file. Grant Cardone knows that. He knows this document is correct and accurate. And did you guys hear that noise? That was the noise of Grant Cardone's sphincter swiftly tightening up and sucking all of the oxygen out of the room. In fact, 3 people standing around Grant Cardone just fainted due to a sudden lack of oxygen. Now, you would have every right to still be skeptical or question the validity or the origin or the accuracy of this spreadsheet. And that's fine, that's your place. There's no reason for you to take my word for it. But there's one person who doesn't question or dispute the validity of this spreadsheet, and that's Grant Cardone himself, because he recognizes this spreadsheet, he knows he created it, he knows no one but an insider has access to this information. And there's another entity that does not question the validity of this spreadsheet, or entities, I should say. And that is the various federal agencies who are investigating Grant Cardone and Cardone Capital for fraud. And that brings us to the point of, well, where is your evidence of the federal investigation? And to those of you who have asked that question, I would say, what evidence is it that you are expecting? Are you expecting a signed statement or a public, a press conference from the federal agencies saying, we're investigating Grant Cardone and Cardone Capital? I mean, that's just not how it works. And others have said that because they haven't been able to find any news articles about Grant being investigated. Well, the implication was that if they had seen a news article, that itself would be evidence. And that's just not true. Something doesn't have to be published about in order to be true. And just because something gets published doesn't make it true. Now, I can tell you from firsthand knowledge that there are media platforms who have in their possession every piece of knowledge and information and documentation that's in my possession and have just been and had it before I had it and are just waiting for the investigation to conclude and be formally announced before they publish. And my information and what I've learned have come from the exact same sources that a journalist would get their information. It's just that if a journalist were to publish about this story, they would have to say something like, we've consulted with many verified sources who have chosen to remain anonymous because they were not authorized to speak publicly about this. I mean, that is the exact situation that I'm in. I'm not going to disclose the identity of the people that I'm talking to. And if that means that you want to question the validity of the information, that is totally fair. But I'll tell you who doesn't question the validity of the information, And that's Grant Cardone. And that's why he refuses to respond to these allegations. And he just wants to call everyone haters and clickbaiters and trolls. Because you see, here's what Grant knows. Grant knows that when the federal authorities are involved, oftentimes lying about the thing gets you in more trouble than the thing itself. The feds have to build a case in order to convict someone on the thing itself. But if in the process of trying to do that, they catch you in a whole bunch of lies related to the thing, well, now they don't have to worry about the thing so much. They can nail you for the lies. And that's why Grant's policy on this particular subject and this particular set of accusations is to convince everybody that the right way to respond is to not respond. Because let's be real, Grant is stuck between a rock and a rock. My information comes directly from current and former Cardone Capital employees and executives who have firsthand knowledge of the fraud at Cardone Capital and are actively cooperating with federal investigations. And we think, well, Aaron, you're kind of letting the cat out of the bag. Like, why give Grant a heads up that this is going on? Grant knows this is going on, you guys. And if he doesn't, he's the only one at Cardone Capital who doesn't. It's just not plausible that Grant doesn't know. And what's Grant gonna do? There's nothing Grant can do at this point that's more incriminating than what he has already done. And anything Grant could possibly do from this point forward to destroy evidence, which he's already done, to tamper with witnesses, to try to obstruct the investigation, just gives the feds all the more ammunition that they need to shut the operation down. And guys, I'm not even doing this video because it's not like I think you have to believe me. In fact, I'll go one step further. There's literally no reason for you to take my word for it. What I encourage you to do is take the information that I'm presenting, and if you're a Cardone Capital investor, demand that someone at Cardone Capital sends you even one piece of evidence to disprove even one of the things I'm saying or one of the numbers on the spreadsheet that I'm showing you. And any discussion about what's real or not real or true or not true is honestly purely academic, because Grant Cardone doesn't need to worry about what I think. Nobody needs to worry about whether what's in this YouTube video is true. Grant Cardone needs to worry about the federal investigations into fraud. It's not about my video. It's about Cardone Capital and the feds investigating fraud. And Grant knows damn well that this Cardone's Capital spreadsheet is his, and that he created it, and that it's an internal document. And he knows damn well how few people had access to this document. And he knows that those people who had access to this document, he knows all the other information that those people also had access to. And he knows that if I have this internal document in my possession, he can be sure that the federal authorities have it as well. And if they have this, he can be sure they have much more than that as well. Guys, this is why Grant looks so anxious and nervous and scared in his recent videos. Try watching one of Grant's videos with the volume turned all the way down. Just look at his facial expressions and his eyes darting all over the place. Once you're not distracted by Grant's hyper, uber-manic way of communicating, you see anxiety and fear. For right now, I want to jump right to the fourth item that I mentioned, or the fourth response that I want to respond to, which is that these accusations were already made in a lawsuit, and that lawsuit was thrown out. Grant was found innocent of those charges, either found innocent and not charges. It was a civil lawsuit. But either that the judge either determined that this wasn't happening, or the judge determined that it was happening, but it's totally legal. Those of you who believe that, that is 100% false. Yes, there was a civil suit. Yes, it was thrown out. That civil suit is on appeal right now. We haven't heard back on it. But regardless of what the decision on the appeal is, what I am currently accusing Grant of played no role, had no part in the accusations that were made against him in the civil suit that you guys are talking about. And realize I'm going to use the language what I'm accusing him of. It is not me making these accusations, but I am the one publishing them, so I'm just going to use that description just as kind of a shorthand. The lawsuit, the civil lawsuit that was thrown out, accused Grant of three things. One was guaranteeing a 15% internal rate of return in certain posts on social media. The second accusation was that Grant did not disclose that he was going to charge investors interest on the funds that Grant used to purchase the property. So Grant would buy a property, he would then sell the property to the fund. It was disclosed that that's what was going to happen, but it wasn't disclosed that he was going to charge the fund 6% interest on his money that he used to buy the property up front. The other accusation is that Grant was buying properties for over market value. Some people seem to be confusing that accusation with the one that I am currently making. The accusation as given in the lawsuit is essentially Grant's not doing a good job because he's buying properties that are too expensive. What I'm saying is Grant Cardone is tasked by his investors with finding a good property for them to invest in. Grant Cardone then goes out and finds a property. Let's just say it's for $100 million. Instead of going, hey, I found a great property for my investors that will generate great returns for them, he goes, I'm going to buy this property for $100 million. He doesn't tell anyone that that's what he did. He doesn't tell anyone that that's what he paid for it. Then he goes to his investors and he goes, hey guys, I found this property for you for $120 million. Look at this great deal I found you. Now, some people have responded to me saying, hey, look, that's just wholesaling. There's nothing wrong with wholesaling a property. There's an entire industry of just wholesaling, and there's nothing wrong with buying low and selling high. There's nothing wrong with profiting in real estate. Guys, I understand what wholesaling is. Almost every property I've purchased, maybe close to 30 properties, I've probably purchased over 75% of my properties from wholesalers. Wholesalers do a great service to the industry. I got no problem with wholesalers or wholesaling. That's not what we're talking about here. Wholesaling is one thing. Double dipping is a completely different animal. Let me just read this definition. Embezzlement and double dipping. Embezzlement is the misuse of funds entrusted in one's care. It is a common white-collar crime that most people understand. However, fewer people have heard of the crime of double dipping. This is an illegal practice that often happens when a broker handles a client's account for a fee and charges an additional commission fee, which allows them to obtain money using two methods. So it is in essence this concept of profiting twice off of the same client, paying yourself twice from the same client for the same action. Now again, don't take my word for it. It's only my opinion that what I'm describing for you is double dipping or even triple dipping when I break this down for you. I'm not the regulator. I'm not the prosecutor. I'm not the judge or the jury. That's why my goal is to put the information out to you guys. Those of you who are Cardone Capital investors, don't take my word for it, guys. Take my information, send it to Grant, send it to the IR team at Cardone Capital, and say, you guys show me one piece of proof that what's being described here is not true. And if you guys do that and you receive proof that contradicts, negates, disproves what I'm saying here, send it to me and I will publish a public retraction. So here's how what Grant is doing is not just wholesaling, it's not just property flipping, it is double dipping or triple dipping. So Grant takes his own, and this also gets into what's disclosed versus what's undisclosed and what's really happening. Grant goes and identifies this property for $100 million. He buys it with his own money. That's already disclosed in the paperwork. That's not where fraud occurs. At this point, we're still potentially wholesaling. And when Grant buys these properties himself, it's not an all cash deal. He's using some of his money and he's using some leverage. The problem here arises when he then turns around and charges Cardone Capital investors 6% interest on his money that he used to buy the deal. Well, look, once you start charging the investors interest on the money you used, then you're saying that money belonged to the investors. You're saying that you were essentially loaning them the money to buy the property. So you can't now continue to act as the middleman and pretend like that property belongs to you personally and flip it to the fund for a $20 million profit when you're saying that by charging them interest on the money, you're saying it was really their money that was used to buy the property. This is where the double dipping comes into play. And where we get into possible triple dipping is when you consider that Grant charges Cardone Capital a 1% acquisition fee on that inflated price that he flipped the property to the investors for. That's why this doesn't just come down to, oh, well, if it was disclosed, it's legal. There's a reason it's not disclosed. You can't disclose double dipping and triple dipping and say, well, I disclosed it, so it's legal. Now, I have heard from a few investors who are basically saying, you know, I have gotten my 4% distributions ever since I started investing, and that's all I expected, and that's exactly what I got, and so I'm happy. And to those of you who feel that way, I would say, congratulations. I mean, 4% annual returns is absolute trash, but if that's what you expected, and that's what you got, and you're happy, then more power to you. But I'll tell you, Bernie Madoff's investors all got good returns as well. And those guys running around telling everyone how great their returns is how Bernie Madoff was able to continue to grow his customer base and expand his scheme and his fraud. And what Grant is doing doesn't really have any similarity to Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme, and I don't mean to imply that it does. But stop using the fact that you're getting returns to justify a fraudulent business model. It is possible for some people to be happy with their returns, and for the investors as a whole to be being defrauded. These two things can both be true at the same time. And if you're thinking, well, if this was all true, you know, this is easy enough to verify, this would have already come up already. This is not easy to verify. Cardone Capital does not disclose the real purchase price of its properties. Cardone Capital structures its acquisitions in a way where you cannot actually find out, in most cases, through public documents. And the evidence is this, guys. I know there's a bunch of you out there who are very sophisticated in this industry. Take it upon yourself. Look at this spreadsheet. This is why this spreadsheet is so damning. I've done my homework. Do some homework of your own. Just take a few of the items on this spreadsheet. By the way, the Cardone Capital investment scheme starts right here. Earlier than this point, all the funds that Grant was using was the friends and family funds. From this point on is when he started raising funds from accredited and unaccredited investors through social media, and there's a marked change in the stated financials of these properties from that point on. So just pick a few properties from this point down to the bottom and do your own homework. Go find for yourself the actual purchase price of those properties and see if you find something that confirms what's in this spreadsheet, or see if you find something that contradicts what's in this spreadsheet. And if you find something that contradicts what's in this sheet, send it to me and I will address it. Everything I have described for you in this video about how Grant's scheme is structured is disclosed to investors, except for the front-running part. Yes, it is disclosed that Grant personally takes possession of a property before opening it up to investors. It is not disclosed that Grant is acquiring a property for a lower price than he's flipping it to the fund for. Now, you might think, well, that's just common sense, Aaron. That's just common sense. It's not common sense when the investors are already paying him an acquisition fee to find appropriate properties suitable for their investment. And you might think it's common sense, and I might think it's not common sense, but my opinion doesn't matter, and your opinion doesn't matter. It's the federal authorities who are investigating Grant, not me. So once again, I just can't stress it enough. Don't take my word for it, guys. Make Cardone Capital explain themselves. Don't let Grant get away with just saying, oh, it's clickbaiters and haters and trolls, and they talk about me for money, they talk about me for views and clicks. Guys, that's just a distraction. Say, yeah, I get it, bro, I get it. They're all haters and clickbaiters. Show me how this isn't true. Make them answer your question, not my question. And by the way, another juicy bit of information is that the CBRE mortgage brokers who were involved in many of these deals, in many cases, were personally investing in the deals. My sources tell me that is very illegal. Perhaps it would be legal if it was disclosed. So I say to you, Cardone Capital investors, send me any examples of any of the disclosures where it says that the CBRE mortgage brokers will be personally investing in the deals. I promise you it's not in there. And obviously anything I discuss in this video, it wouldn't even be possible to, and I would never try to cover everything at Cardone Capital that has come to the attention of the feds, and that's going to be a problem. The investigation has been going on for quite some time. I actually have intentionally not stated the exact amount of time that the investigation has been going on for. But Cardone Capital, they do a lot of dirty business at Cardone Capital, particularly when it comes to recruiting new investors. I mean, I'm talking about stuff like Grant having his own internal underwriting operation to underwrite all the properties, which is totally legit. But then when the information is presented to Grant for his approval, he'll just look it over and go, I don't like that number. Let's raise that up a few percentage points. And you know what? Numbers look more believable when they have decimals. Change that from a 15 to a 15.3. And look, you could be sitting there going, cool story, bro. You can never prove that. I don't have to prove it, guys. This federal investigation has been going on for a long time. They have Cardone Capital executives going to work wearing wires, hidden audio recording devices, hidden video recording devices, collecting trash, collecting shredding, collecting records. And Grant Cardone, knowing, or you'd think, if he doesn't know, we have a whole other problem, knowing that this is the kind of heat that's coming down on him, continuing to raise investor money from unsophisticated, millennial, unaccredited investors through Facebook and Instagram. It's pretty insidious. And actually, it makes you wonder if perhaps this isn't the reason why Cardone Capital hasn't actually purchased any new deals in the entirety of 2022. They haven't purchased one new deal. Maybe this is part of the reason why. So anyway, guys, to wrap up here, here's the internal Cardone Capital spreadsheet one more time. What you have here in this column where it says purchase price, this is the actual purchase price that Grant Cardone paid. Take this spreadsheet, copy it, send it into Cardone Capital. Here's the other spreadsheet that I want to show you, because this one shows side by side the purchase that Grant paid and the purchase price that was actually quoted to all of the investors. And remember, guys, look at this list. This is only from September 2016 to December 2019. And Grant made over $100 million, over $110 million, flipping properties to his investors that his investors were already paying him an acquisition fee to find for them. If you go through your disclosures and you find language that describes this behavior and you send it to me, like I said, I will publicly apologize and retract everything I've said about this fraud. I say that while knowing full well it's not what I think that matters, it's what the feds think. But just for the hell of it, if someone can show me a disclosure that actually acknowledges that this is what Grant is doing, I will publish my retraction, and Grant can call it a victory on that day, regardless of what the feds choose to do with Grant Cardone and Cardone Capital. I want to hear from you lawyers out there. I want to hear from you investors out there. Tell me where I'm getting it wrong. All right, everyone, thank you for watching. Thank you to everyone who watches until the very end, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right